All right, let's talk about making a warrantless arrest. A constitutional arrest has three components. Number one, you have probable cause. Number two, you have jurisdiction to make the arrest. Number three, you have lawful access to the arrestee. Let's go through them individually. Number one, probable cause. So, probable cause requires a fair probability of a crime committed. It's not a high standard. It's a pretty low standard, just a fair probability, right? You know, the scales of justice. The standard of probable cause applies to all arrests without the need to balance the interests and circumstances involved in particular situations. If an officer has probable cause to believe that an individual has committed even a very minor criminal offense in his presence, he may, without violating the Fourth Amendment, arrest the offender. Okay, but before we go on, you've got to be crystal clear on one issue. What this is addressing is the constitutionality of the arrest. It is not addressing state law issues. Many states have restrictions on making arrests. Some prohibit an arrest for an infraction. Some prohibit an arrest for a fine only. Some prohibit an arrest for traffic. You need to comply with all of your state restrictions and agency restrictions. Some agencies are out there like, hey, do not arrest people for personal use marijuana, even though it may be illegal in our state, right? However, the reason I bring this up is because we're talking about the Constitution. The Constitution just requires probable cause of an offense. So if you made an arrest that technically was not permitted by your state law, and that person turned around and sued you under the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, they would likely lose. However, they would likely win their complaint against you and possibly even a state law claim that you violated their state law rights. So just keep that in mind. So what we're teaching here is just some general overarching constitutional issues. Now, I want you to think about probable cause as a twofold analysis. Number one is, do you have probable cause that a crime was even committed? Think about that. Before you start putting hands on people and arresting people and taking them to the station and booking them in, make sure that you have a decent amount of probable cause that a crime has actually been committed. If you're like unsure that a crime has even been committed, I don't think you should be arresting anybody. Not yet. Right? So what kind of evidence, should you have? Some clear and convincing evidence that a crime has actually occurred. And then after you have thought about whether or not PC even exists for a crime, then ask yourself, is this person that I'm going to arrest or cite, do I believe that this person is the one that committed that crime? So those are kind of like some pro tips. Hopefully it helps. And finally, or next, we have jurisdiction for warrantless arrest. Obviously, you have to have lawful authority to make that arrest. This is under state law. Now, this is usually never an issue. Most officers have authority to make an arrest anywhere in the state as a peace officer. Not everywhere. Some states are more restrictive. They only have police powers within their boundaries of their municipality and so forth. But even when we're in states that are more restrictive, right? You have a cop that's outside of his or her jurisdiction. The courts usually just apply citizen arrest logic, right? So they uphold the arrest usually under those grounds. And then finally, we have lawful access. So you have to have lawful access to the arrestee. Otherwise, it's going to be an unlawful arrest and can have some consequences. Suppression of evidence, lawsuits, Miranda issues, right? They confess, but now because there's an unlawful arrest, you can actually have a suppression of their testimony. So let's walk through a few things here. Number one is, in order to have a valid warrantless arrest, usually it starts outside the home. Now, This case, United States versus Santana, addresses a hot pursuit issue. It does not address when cops are already in the home and develop probable cause to arrest. If you're already in the home because you're investigating a domestic violence or you're serving a warrant, you entered with consent, whatever it is, if you're already in the home and you develop probable cause, you can arrest that person right then and there. I simply want to talk to you about, can you chase somebody in the home? Well, just keep in mind that as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, a public place for an arrest occurs from the threshold of the front door, which is basically where the door shuts, right, the frame, outwards. So if they are standing in their doorway, generally speaking, they are not arrestable. That is not a public place. That's the point of this slide right here. Okay? So if you have probable cause to arrest somebody, let's say it's a hit and run, and let's say it's a hit and run felony, and you go to their house, the car is in the driveway, and you knock on the door, and they answer. And you say, hey, partner, look, it looks like you've been involved in an accident. Can you come out here and talk to me? And he says, I don't want to come out of my home and talk to you. Talk to me right here. No, come on, I want to talk to you out here. He's like, no, you talk to me here. I don't want to talk to you at all. And then you say, okay, fine, you're under arrest. Come on out. He does not want to come on out. And you don't have his consent, obviously. You don't have any exigency, just for the facts of this case. And you reach in there and you grab him out, you have a problem on your hands. I call that body snatching. We're not supposed to be body snatching people out of their homes, right? He has a right, a constitutional right, to force you to go to a judge and get pre-approval to go arrest him. It's the way it works, okay? So keep that in mind. The other thing I want to let you know is that the severity of the crime doesn't create hot pursuit. So if you're at his door and you know he's in there and you have probable cause for a murder that happened several days ago, and you know he's in there, but you don't have any other exigency, right? You can't go in there and get him. Not with probable cause alone. You're going to need either his consent, exigency, which you don't have here, right? Or a warrant. So keep that in mind. The severity of the crime does not allow you lawful access to people inside their homes. Okay? All right. Now I want to talk to you about this case. So an officer had probable cause to arrest this guy for violating a temporary protective order. He basically went to the ex's house. He violated that order. He wasn't even supposed to be there. And this is his parents' house. This is where he lives now, right? They're separated. So he violated that order. The cop has probable cause, and the guy is inside his home. Actually, what happened was the guy was outside the house temporarily talking to the cop and said, you know what, I'm kind of done here. I want to be left alone. He goes back into the home, and then the officer decides to chase him into the home and arrest him. The problem is that the suspect was already in his home when the deputy decided to arrest him. So this is not hot pursuit. Hot pursuit has to start outside of the home, right? So just keep that in mind. And also, if it's a misdemeanor, right, or gross misdemeanor, if you have gross misdemeanors in your state, don't forget that the hot pursuit also has to have some kind of emergency as well to get inside the home, right? Hot pursuit alone for a misdemeanor will not get you into people's homes, all right? All right. Police had probable cause to arrest a lawyer for selling cocaine, a little side hustle. Without consent, exigency, or a warrant, they walked past the receptionist and entered his office and made an arrest. Are we good? The answer is no. Here, this was an unlawful arrest because the court found that he had a reasonable expectation of privacy in his office. All right? So keep those things in mind. In order to have a lawful arrest, you have to have probable cause, the authority to make the arrest, so jurisdictional issues, and lawful access. Out of all three of those, which one is going to cause you the most issues is the lawful access part. Make sure you have lawful access. Usually the probable cause is not that hard. It's a pretty low standard, relatively speaking. Jurisdiction, usually almost never an issue. It's that lawful access. Okay? All right.